Let's take a call from Art in Milwaukee on this topic. Hi, Art.
Good morning. So, Chris, I don't know if you've had a chance to visit Cuba, as Ted Cruz, who's a Canadian, has not, but I have many times, and I've represented people from Milwaukee who were prosecuted by our government for going to visit their sister church in Cuba. So I don't think we handed anything to the Cuban government. What we did is we freed our own people so that we will have a chance, if Congress doesn't change it, to travel almost as freely to Cuba as Cuba allows its citizens to travel abroad. And you may not know there's a Harley Club in Havana, but they can't buy Harleys or Harley parts from the U.S. because the U.S. doesn't allow it. So there's a potential for having us to sell our agricultural products on commercial terms much more than we can now, and for our industries and our people to sell to Cuba. And it's a win-win for both sides.
Chris?
Well, I guess the message is that, everything is awesome in Cuba. I would suspect that a lot of Cubans would disagree. Part of this does seem to boil down to, political lines. I'm not sure what the reference was to Ted Cruz being a Canadian. I mean, he has the Cuban ancestry, but, whatever. I think one of the things that, I was struck by this week, going back to Wisconsin's congressional delegation and how they responded to this, was what Senator Tammy Baldwin had to say, and some quotes here that she said that, the U.S. policy to isolate Cuba has, quote, not achieved our national security objectives, has created hardship for the Cuban people, and has failed to weaken the Cuban regime. I think that's putting blame in exactly the wrong place. It's the Cuban government, it's the Castro regime, and it's communism that has created this ongoing hardship over the decades for the Cuban people. And if the Cuban regime remains strong, knowing the conditions that they're living under, why is the president effectively giving up and throwing in the towel? It just doesn't make sense.
I guess I'd like to say, Chris, that same reasoning could have applied to our policy toward China. When we think about old policies that don't work, 50 years of this, my whole lifetime, what has helped in Cuba? Nothing. This is backward thinking. And what we need to do is look ahead. And the more we open up to the Cuban people and allow our tourists and our people to come in and expose them to democracy and to the American people, the more Cuba will change. My daughter actually was able to travel to Cuba last year and saw it for herself, the poverty and what's going on there. And she was just struck by how poor the people were and how they were really suffering. This will open that up, and I think, when the Human Rights Watch and the Pope and others say, these are certainly not people that are pro-communist, that are saying this is the right thing. This is the right thing to do for the Cuban people. You got to stop thinking in a backwards fashion.
But
moving forward.
They may not be pro-communist, but they're living under a communist regime.
Well, so are the people in China. So are the people in a lot of countries in the world, and we don't have no ties with them. So this is ridiculous to be bound to old policies that don't work. You can say, well, they mistreat people. Well, look at what the United States government does to our base in Guantanamo, what we've just learned. So, and that's in Cuba. So let's be not hypocritical about this, and let's try something new. I give the president a lot of credit.